A gate agent mocked me at the airport, not knowing I was a tomb guard. 8 minutes later, the Pentagon called her desk. That was the moment she realized she'd just made the worst mistake of her life. "This isn't Arlington. We don't have time for your little theatrics." The words hit the terminal like a slap. Gate C-14 at Reagan National went quiet, that specific kind of silence where everyone's pretending not to listen, but absolutely is. I stood at the counter in my dress blues, hands at my sides, posture perfect. I'd asked for 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes to wait for a Gold Star mother whose connecting flight from Atlanta had been delayed. Her son's memorial ceremony at Arlington was scheduled for 2 p.m. If she missed this flight, she'd miss saying goodbye. The gate agent, her name tag read Megan Brooks in that cheerful airline font, rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might actually get stuck. She was maybe 30, blonde hair pulled back tight, the kind of forced smile that had died somewhere around hour 6 of her shift. "Look, soldier boy," she said, loud enough to make sure everyone in the gate area heard. "We have a schedule. We're not delaying a flight for your little escort mission. The door closes in 90 seconds, whether your VIP is here or not. Theatrics. Little escort mission." I didn't react. That's not what we do. A sentinel doesn't flinch, doesn't argue, doesn't break bearing for anything, not weather, not exhaustion, not insults from someone who doesn't know what the badge on my chest means. But the old man behind me, gray hair, weathered face, leaning on a wooden cane, Vietnam veteran pin on his worn cap, he made a sound, half grunt, half laugh, muttered just loud enough for me and Megan to hear. She has no idea who she's talking to. Megan's perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up. She leaned over the counter, that fake smile turning into something sharper. "And who are you? The airport manners police?" The veteran straightened as much as his back would allow. "No, ma'am. I'm just a man who buried 19 friends before he turned 23, and I know a tomb guard when I see one." Her smirk flickered, just for a second, like a light bulb that's about to burn out. She'd heard those words before, I could tell. Probably in some documentary her boyfriend made her watch once, maybe a news clip during Memorial Day, but she didn't understand them, didn't know what they meant. She didn't know about the badge on my chest, the Tomb Guard Identification Badge, one of the rarest military decorations in existence. Only 688 soldiers have earned it since 1926. Fewer than 20% of those who attempt qualification ever receive it. She didn't know I'd trained for 23 months just to qualify, that I'd memorized the names, ranks, and details of 160,000 souls buried at Arlington, that I'd practiced the 21-step march until my boots wore through, that I'd stood watch in thunderstorms, hurricanes, blizzards, and 105-degree heat until my uniform was soaked through and my feet bled. She didn't know the tomb of the unknown soldier has been guarded continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without interruption since the 2nd of July 1937, not for weather, not for holidays, not for government shutdowns, never. She didn't know my little brother Marcus was buried in Section 60 at Arlington, that he died at 22 when his convoy hit an IED outside Kandahar, that I'd made a promise at his grave, a promise to stand for every soldier who never came home. She just saw a uniform she could dismiss, another grunt she could talk down to because she had a desk and a name tag and a little bit of authority at Gate C-14. "We're closing the door," she snapped, her finger already hovering over the button. "If your little escort is late, that's her problem. The plane leaves in 60 seconds. I lowered my head, not in defeat, in discipline. "Understood, ma'am." The jet bridge door sealed shut with a hydraulic hiss. Through the window, I watched the plane pull back from the gate. Flight 2847 to Louisville. Departure time, 10:47 a.m. 3 minutes later, Mrs. Eleanor Patterson arrived at the gate. She was 71 years old, barely 5 feet tall, wearing a black dress that hung loose on her frame like she'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. She clutched a folded American flag to her chest, the one they'd given her at her son's funeral 2 years ago. Her connecting flight from Atlanta had been delayed by weather. She'd run through the terminal as fast as her legs would carry her. Too late. She looked at me, at the empty gate, at the plane taxiing away. Her face didn't crumble. It was like watching something already broken try to hold itself together one more time and finally give up. "I missed it," she whispered. "Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry." I guided her to a bench near the window, stood at attention beside her. I couldn't sit, we don't break protocol, but I let my voice go soft in a way I normally wouldn't. "Ma'am, I'll get you on the next flight. I'll make sure you get to Arlington. I give you my word." She didn't wail, didn't scream, just cried these quiet, exhausted sobs that sounded like they'd been trapped inside her for 2 years. She pressed that folded flag against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her heart from falling out. "He was supposed to come home," she said. "They said he'd come home in April, but then, and now I can't even get to his ceremony on time. I can't even do this one thing right for him." I felt something crack inside my chest, something that had been held rigid for so long I'd forgotten it could break. I'd failed her son, failed Marcus, failed every unknown soldier I'd sworn to honor. When I looked back at the desk, Megan was watching. She'd seen Mrs. Patterson arrive, seen the flag, seen an elderly woman crying on a bench. Something flickered across her face, not guilt, not yet, but discomfort. The kind that comes when you realize you might have been wrong, but haven't admitted it yet. She looked away quickly, started typing on her computer. Busy work. What none of us knew was that someone else had been watching the whole thing. Evan Rodriguez was a baggage handler for the airline, 24 years old, Army Reserve, served one deployment in Iraq. He'd been walking past gate C-14 when he heard Megan's voice cut through the terminal. "This isn't Arlington." He'd stopped, looked at me, seen the badge, seen the uniform, seen what Megan couldn't or wouldn't see, and he'd pulled out his phone. He'd opened the airline's internal incident reporting system and typed out what he'd witnessed. Then, he'd sent a text message to his former platoon sergeant, who now worked in congressional liaison. That sergeant had forwarded it to someone at the Pentagon. All of this happened in the space of 4 minutes. I didn't know any of this yet. I was focused on Mrs. Patterson, on trying to figure out how to get her to Louisville in time for a 2 p.m. ceremony that was now impossible to make. That's when Megan's desk phone rang. She picked it up absently, still typing. "Gate C-14, this is Megan." Silence. A long, cold pause. Her fingers froze on the keyboard. "Miss Brooks," the voice that came through was deep, military, the kind of voice that's used to being obeyed. "This is Colonel James Walker from the United States Army Military District of Washington." Every drop of color drained from her face. She stood up so fast her chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "Yes, sir. We've received a report involving Staff Sergeant Ryan Bennett of the 3rd United States Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, currently serving as a sentinel at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Is he present at your location?" Her eyes found me across the gate area, wide, panicked. She looked like someone had just told her the floor was about to drop out from under her. "Yes, sir. He's here. Put me on speaker. Now." Her hand shook so badly she could barely press the button. When she did, Colonel Walker's voice filled the terminal. "Staff Sergeant Bennett, this is Colonel Walker. I understand there's been a situation involving a Gold Star family member's travel arrangements." I straightened. "Yes, sir. And I understand that despite your request for a brief delay to ensure this family member's presence on the flight, the gate agent chose to close the door with the family member en route." "That's correct, sir." The silence that followed was the kind that makes your skin crawl. When Colonel Walker spoke again, his voice had gone from professional to something colder. "Miss Brooks, Staff Sergeant Bennett is not soldier boy. He is active duty Army, assigned to one of the most prestigious and demanding posts in the United States military. The 3rd Infantry Regiment has guarded the tomb of the unknown soldier for 87 years without interruption. Sentinels are chosen from volunteers who meet the highest standards of military bearing, discipline, and dedication." Gasps rippled through the terminal. People had their phones out now. An older woman near me whispered, "Oh my God." Colonel Walker continued, "It is of critical importance that Gold Star families who have lost a service member in combat, are treated with the utmost dignity and respect. These families have sacrificed more than most Americans can comprehend. When a sentinel requests accommodation for a Gold Star family member, it is not theatrics. It is a matter of national honor." Megan gripped the desk like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her face had gone from white to gray. "Miss Brooks, I will require a full incident report within the hour. I will be contacting your corporate headquarters to ensure this matter is reviewed at the highest level. Additionally, I will be filing a formal complaint with the Department of Transportation regarding treatment of military escorts and Gold Star families." "Sir, I didn't know." "Ignorance is not an excuse. Your job is to know. Your job is to treat every passenger with dignity, and to treat those who have served and those who have lost loved ones in service with the respect they have earned." The old Vietnam veteran leaned on his cane and looked Megan dead in the eye. His voice was quiet but carried across the silent terminal. "Told you." Megan's supervisor materialized from somewhere, a man in his 50s, red-faced, already on his phone, already getting calls. He looked at Megan like she'd just set fire to the gate desk. "My office. Now," he said, not even bothering to cover the phone. Megan's hands started shaking so badly she knocked over her coffee cup. Brown liquid spread across the desk, soaking papers, dripping onto the floor. She didn't even notice. The entire terminal was staring. Passengers, gate agents from neighboring gates. A pilot walking to his aircraft stopped and took out his phone. A TSA officer stood at attention and saluted me. Everyone saw. Everyone watched. The woman who'd mocked a tomb guard realized she'd just ended her own career in 8 minutes flat. I hadn't said a word beyond, "Yes, sir," and "That's correct, sir." Hadn't argued, hadn't threatened, hadn't needed to. Colonel Walker's voice came through the speaker one more time. "Staff Sergeant Bennett, Mrs. Patterson will be accommodated on the next available flight at no charge, with an airline representative escort to ensure there are no further complications. Is that acceptable?" "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." "You're a credit to the regiment, Sergeant. Carry on." The line went dead. I turned back to Mrs. Patterson, who had stopped crying and was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite might read. Ma'am, let's get you rebooked. The next hour was a blur. Megan was escorted away by her supervisor, who looked like he was 2 seconds from having a stroke. A different gate agent, an older woman named Patricia, who kept apologizing every 30 seconds, personally handled Mrs. Patterson's rebooking. The next flight to Louisville wasn't until 2:15 p.m., which meant Mrs. Patterson would miss the ceremony. But Patricia was already on the phone with someone. Yes, this is Patricia Chen at Reagan National. I need to speak to whoever coordinates Arlington ceremonies. Yes, I'll hold. 5 minutes later, she hung up and turned to Mrs. Patterson. Ma'am, they're delaying the ceremony until 4:30 p.m. to ensure you can be present. There will be a car waiting at Louisville to drive you directly to Arlington. Mrs. Patterson started crying again, but different this time. Relief, gratitude. She looked up at me. Thank you so much. You don't need to thank me, ma'am. Your son earned this. You earned this. She reached out like she wanted to hug me, then stopped herself. She understood enough about military protocol to know I couldn't accept. Instead, she pressed her hand to her heart and bowed her head. I snapped a perfect salute, held it until she looked up. By the time Mrs. Patterson boarded her rescheduled flight, the incident had gone viral. The passenger who'd filmed Megan's public dressing down had posted it to Twitter with the caption, "Gate agent mocks tomb guard. Pentagon calls her desk. Watch karma in real time." 3 million views in 2 hours. The airline's PR department was in full crisis mode. By 3 p.m., they'd released a statement. "We deeply apologize for the treatment Staff Sergeant Bennett and Mrs. Patterson received at Reagan National Airport this morning. The behavior of our employee was unacceptable and does not reflect our company's values or our respect for military service members and Gold Star families. The employee in question has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. We are reviewing our training protocols to ensure this never happens again." Administrative leave. That was corporate speak for fired, but we can't say it yet. Evan Rodriguez, the baggage handler who'd reported it, got a commendation from his reserve unit and a personal thank you call from a general at the Pentagon. The old Vietnam veteran, whose name turned out to be William Chen, no relation to Patricia, became a minor celebrity when someone recognized him from the video and interviewed him. He said exactly what you'd expect. "These kids today have no respect for what that uniform means. That young man stood watch over our nation's dead. You don't mock that. You don't ever mock that." As for me, I filed my report with my commanding officer and went back to Arlington, back to the white marble, back to the 21 steps, back to the rotation of sentinels who've stood watch since 1937 through world wars, terrorist attacks, and pandemics. Because that's what we do. We stand. We don't argue or fight or defend ourselves. We just stand, and we let our bearing speak for itself. 3 weeks later, I was walking my route at the tomb. 21 steps south, face east, pause. 21 seconds, face north, pause. 21 seconds, 21 steps north. Repeat when my relief approached for the changing of the guard. After the ceremony, after we'd marched back to the guard room, my sergeant pulled me aside. "You have a visitor." "Sir?" "She's been waiting for 2 hours. Says she won't leave until she sees you." Mrs. Eleanor Patterson stood in the visitor area, wearing the same black dress, but looking somehow lighter, less burdened. She was holding a photograph. "Staff Sergeant Bennett," she said when she saw me. "I hope this isn't against the rules." "Not at all, ma'am. Is everything all right?" "Everything is better. I wanted to show you this." She held up the photograph. It showed a young soldier in dress uniform, broad smile, same eyes as his mother. "This is my son, Staff Sergeant Thomas Patterson. He was 24 when he died. He looks like a good man, ma'am." He was. "And because of you, I got to attend his memorial. I got to hear his friends talk about him. I got to see where he'll rest. I got to say goodbye properly." Her voice cracked. "You gave me that. You and that phone call, and even that awful woman, in a strange way." "Ma'am, let me finish. Thomas wrote me a letter before he died. One of those, if you're reading this letters. He said that if anything happened to him, he wanted me to know that he'd been surrounded by people who understood honor, who understood duty, who would stand watch over him even after he was gone." She wiped her eyes. "I thought that was just nice words, but then I met you, and I understood what he meant." She pressed the photograph into my hand. "Would you keep this? In your guard room, or wherever you keep things? So you know whose family you help? So you remember Thomas?" I looked at the photo, at Staff Sergeant Thomas Patterson's smile, at the 82nd Airborne patch on his shoulder. "It would be an honor, ma'am." She hugged me then, protocol be damned, and I let her. Because some things are more important than rules. After she left, I walked back to the tomb, placed the photograph in our memorial book, the one where we keep letters and photos from families, to remind us why we stand. I thought about Megan Brooks, about how 8 minutes can change your entire life, about how one decision, one moment of cruelty or carelessness can expose exactly who you are to the entire world. I wondered if she understood yet, if she'd figured out that it wasn't really about the flight, or the delay, or even the phone call. It was about the fact that some things are sacred, some duties are holy, some sacrifices are so profound that mocking them is unforgivable. I wondered if she'd learned that under underestimating someone in uniform, any uniform, is a mistake because you don't know what they've seen, what they've lost, what they've sworn to protect. I wondered if she'd learned anything at all, but mostly, I thought about Mrs. Patterson, about how she'd gotten to say goodbye to her son, about how a 2-minute delay had been worth someone's career, and I thought it was a fair trade.